My name is Kayla Osborne, and for this assignment about teaching something to a paraprofessional, I wanted to talk about working with emotionally unpredictable students at transition age. And I'm going to talk more about why I wanted to talk about that in just a minute, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So I went ahead and started with my resources, some things that I use, some things that you should go to and look at to learn more. These are just some resources that I found effective, just about positive behavior techniques, having a responsive classroom, and just teaching the strategies that are needed. And so I would definitely check those out. They're good information. So why is it important in transition stages to talk about this? And so this is why I think that it's important and why I wanted to talk about this. So students are dealing with a lot of change in the transitional process. They're making a lot of decisions about their future. They're having to decide what they want to do. And that's really hard. Now, that's hard for adults, no matter what you're doing. And so students are dealing with stress, and that stress can cause a lot of the behaviors that I'm going to be talking about today. So it can cause frustration, defensiveness, and aggression, among with many, many more. But those are just the ones that I'm going to be talking about today. So these behaviors may intensify and become harder to handle in middle and high school. So the behaviors that you may found um, easily fixable or easy to step in and handle in elementary school may not be as easy when you're dealing with students that are in the transition age. And you really need to have a plan. And so I want to teach the paraprofessionals here so that they know and that they're ready and they have a plan when they're teaching my students that are in transitional stages and they're having behavior problems. So I want them to be ready with the plan. And so these are just two resources that I found, and it talks about why it's important for students with transitional needs. One of them talks mostly about positive interventions and supports, and it's on pbis.org, and it's very good read, and it's about high school. The other one's about positive reinforcement, and it's from Kansas University. It talks about what positive reinforcement is and why it is effective. And so those are some other things that you should check out. But this is why I want to talk about this today. I feel like it's something that needs to be talked about, something that's very important when sometimes we just throw paras in there and then they're dealing with hard behaviors, especially students at transition age when those behaviors may have intensified or they may be different. And they may throw them in there and they have no clue what to do when these behaviors occur. So, working with frustration. So, we're going to go ahead and jump on in. So some warning signs for frustration. Maybe the student may bite their nails, the student may bite their lips, they may mutter or grumble, they may appear flushed, they may appear tense sitting in their seat or standing up, and they may get stuck on a topic or maybe even an issue. And so you're really going to get to know your students and you're going to see these warning signs. And so I just encourage you to look out for the warning signs and be ready. So just look out for those and it will help you have a plan and be ready. And so here are some strategies that you use to prevent or reduce frustration. So one thing that you can do that's really easy is just to send the student out of the room for just a little bit. That you might need to send them to the office to, get something for you or send them to the library. Just send them out of the room on an errand. And that will help the student get away from the situation and calm down and come back. Another thing that you can do is have a cool down area where the student sits. They know that it's a cool down area. You may have some things like maybe putty or maybe just a comfortable chair where they can cool down and just think about their frustrations, think about why they're frustrated, and have a chance to um, change that and come back. Another thing that you want to do is to teach them communication strategies, and so you're going to want to teach them, hey, it's okay to be frustrated, but let's talk about it. Let's communicate. And which was my next point, talking it out. Um, One thing that you may do is to teach your students at the beginning of the year what an IOU is. So that may be um, and how you may be, well, right now is not a good time to talk about it. You need to calm down before we can talk. So I owe you. We're going to talk more about it at a different time, a more convenient time for you. That time doesn't need to be the next day. It needs to be that day, soon after the behavior. But you can just give them a break and talk about it in a little while. Another thing that you can do, that you need to do, is teach your students self-calming strategies. And this is very important that they know how to deal with their frustration. They know strategies that they can use to calm themselves down. Because if they don't have those strategies, the cool down area, errands and running tasks, communication strategies, those aren't going to work if they don't know how to initially calm themselves down. So I would say that using those self-calming strategies is extremely important. Um, and then also just using motivational strategies to increase the desires of learning. And so you're going to want to use something that makes learning more inviting. And so find out what that student likes, and you can use motivational strategies if the student's getting frustrated or that's something that they struggle with a lot. And so here's some resources to help. Just self-calming strategies that you can look up and you can use if you're not familiar with that. And just another link about the importance of understanding challenging behaviors and just working with students that have challenging behaviors. So the next thing is working with aggression. And so this is definitely one that is hard to deal with, especially like I said, when we're working with students in transition age and they're a little bit older, middle and high school, it may be harder to deal with these things. And so it's really important that we have a plan. So the warning signs may be making threats. It may be using inappropriate language, maybe using inappropriate gestures, and then also physically harming others, and maybe even attempting to harm others. And so maybe attempting to strike others or anything like that could be definitely signs of aggression. And so you've got to be ready. So some strategies to prevent or reduce aggression. These are so important to know. So when a student is dealing with this behavior, the wrong move from us can cause an explosion. And so the first thing that you're going to want to really know is about removing the students and the staff from the room. And so if the student is physical, they're having some physical aggression, you're going to want to immediately um, get that vicinity clear. You're going to want to get the students out. You're going to want to protect your safety and their safety. And just get all of those students and even maybe teachers out of the room. Another thing that you're going to want to do that's so important is you're not going to want to be in their face or get right in front of them. A good place to be is beside them. So you could get beside them and just make sure that you're not up in their face and you're not coming off as an opposer or um, something like that. You don't want to come off as that you're um, going to take down the behavior. You're not going to come off as a threat to them. And so, with saying that, you're really going to want to use supportive communication, really, sometimes without saying anything. And that's what I added there, supportive communication without saying anything. And what I mean by that is, your posture. When you're dealing with them, they know by your posture, by your facial expressions, how you're feeling. And so you want to have just that accepting, that just tone and posture that you are there for that student in that moment. And when you speak, you need to have a calm and accepting tone. Another thing that you definitely want to make sure that you do is leave a clear escape to the door. And so this is something that can be confusing because sometimes we want to say, well, we don't want them to get out and run away. But we don't, unless you have a compelling reason to do so, you do not want to block the door. With very young children, you may want to block the door. You don't want them going out and running around the hallway, but we're dealing with students that are of transitional age. So this means that they're in middle school or high school. And so they know what they're doing. They're responsible for their actions. And, we also have to know the structure of the school, the security systems that we have. So is that student going to be able to go out and run straight out the door? Or is there going to be things in place that can make sure that you don't block the door? But the main thing is that when you block the door, you're going to come off as a threat. You're going to come off as you have no way out. You're stuck. And when you do that, the students are going to do anything they can to go around you or through you. And so you really, really don't want to be standing in front of the door or blocking the door in any way. You're going to want to be very supportive of the student. You're going to want to try to calm them down so they don't want to run, but you're going to not want to block that door. And the last thing is to give students a clear statement of choices. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So when you give the student clear statement of choices, there's three things that you can do. So the first thing is you're going to want to give the students two clear choices with consequences. And so you're going to want to put the teacher preferred choice last. So it's the last thing that they hear. So you can say, if Johnny's refusing to sit down and do his work, you can say, Johnny, you can refuse to do your work. You can run around the room. Or you're going to be written up for detention, or you can start the assignment and sit down and you don't have to be written up. So you're going to want to put the choice that you want last. You don't want the student to be written up. So you got to put that last. Or you can sit down, start your assignment, and then you won't be written up. And that ends on a positive note for them. And so the second thing is if they don't comply. So if they don't comply, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to state exactly what you want them to do. So the first thing that you said is you can either do this or this. One that is something that you didn't want them to do, and one was something that you did want them to do. And sometimes this can be confusing, especially as we're dealing with students that have different disabilities. They may have took that very literally. And so we want to make sure when dealing with students with transitional needs that we don't just say that and then, send them to the office because they didn't do what you said. We want to give them another chance. And so what you're going to do at that point is you're going to give them specific of what you want. So you would say, Johnny, I want you to go to your desk now and I want you to start your work. And so when you say that, you're telling them exactly where you want them to go to their desk, and you're telling them exactly when, and that will be now. And so, and you also want to make sure that you can enforce any consequence that you tell the student. So you don't want to say you're going to go to the office if you can't enforce that. Students may try to push you and see if you're serious, and if you're not serious, they're not going to listen to you any of the times that you try to correct the behavior. So make sure that you're always able to back up what you preach. And lastly, if the student fails to comply with your request, you're going to want to be able to enforce what you said in the first place. So you said Johnny's going to the office, then if they don't comply after you gave them 2 chances, then whatever it was, you're going to want to do. And the other thing is that you're really going to want to put together a crisis plan so you know exactly what to do if there is a crisis. And so you know exactly how to respond. If you need to evacuate a room, you're going to need to know exactly how to respond. So you may need to become familiar with your school's crisis plan in order to do that. And lastly is just working with defensiveness. So warning signs of defensiveness may be students lashing out at one another, withdrawing emotionally or physically, and just posing a challenge with you because you're the authority. They may refuse to follow rules, do what's told, and they may blame their behavior on other students. So some things that you can do to help that is to just talk with the students. Talk about who is correct and who is in control. So you're incorrect. It is not okay to run around the classroom. And I am the teacher. I don't want you to run around the classroom because it's not safe, because you can get hurt, and because I want you to learn and I want everyone else to learn. So you just need to really lay out who is correct and who is in control. You can also use nonverbal cues or talk to the student in private. And so they may be trying to gain attention from peers. And so by using nonverbal cues or talking about the issue in private may illuminate the behavior. Another thing you definitely want to do is, like I said before, just use that quiet voice and tone when you're dealing with any kind of behavior, because that does not pose you as a threat to them. One thing that may be hard to do is apologizing. So even if you did nothing wrong and the student is just, lashing out, if you even sense that you feel as if they think that you wronged them, go ahead and start off by apologizing. I'm sorry if it ever seemed that, I was trying to do you wrong, but really what I wanted you to do was to sit down and do your work so that you could learn how to do these math problems and, count money or whatever it is. And talk to the student about appropriate responses. So what could have happened? What would have been the right thing to do? And it's just really important the communication, and also, if the student is feeling defensive or feeling upset or feeling threatened, maybe they need some accommodations on assignment. They may be dealing with some stress. You may need to say, okay, I just want you to do these 3 instead of all 5. But you definitely need to work with the student and realize that these students, they have a lot going on. Like I said before, they're making so many decisions. They have a lot of stress, a lot of frustration, aggression, and defensiveness that they can get. And so I really just want parents to know, and anyone in the school system know, that when you're working with students with transition, that we have to have a plan in working with behavior that's emotionally unpredictable, and we have to know what we're going to do in that time. And so I hope that this has helped you, and I hope that now you can go into a classroom with a little bit of knowledge on what you would do if you came across a student that had an emotionally unpredictable behavior and you weren't sure what to do. So I hope that this helped, and thank you for listening.